All right, cool. I guess yeah. I don't know if I should greet like you or the viewers first,
Day
because
one. This is day one, so we'll figure it out.
yeah, I always find it so weird because then in a lot of these things you see the people like dapping each other up, but it's like but you obviously saw each other before,
Yeah,
So do
you
I
know,
still greet you again or
or
do I?
like they start conversations that they've had before. Like,
But yeah,
yeah.
because like you said,
Anyways,
man, day one, very first episode,
yeah,
we'll just get into it and then we'll figure out our groove at
yeah.
some particular
We'll figure
point.
out a name later. We'll figure
Everything is going to be figured
everything
out
later.
later. All
But
we know now is what we're going to talk about, and that's
and
pretty
who
much
we are.
that.
That's it.
And who we are. Yeah, I'm Izzy,
I'm Riyaal.
and yeah, welcome. um, okay, cool. So basically, we're just going to be, reviewing, a couple of movies that we enjoy.
Yeah,
Yeah, have a little
I'd say
discussion about it, what we liked, what we didn't like, and then whatever else comes from that, we'll
yeah.
just we'll
So I would
figure
say
out what
like
time, man.
reviewing and more opinions, not looking comparing to source material too much.
Yeah,
And just
yeah, yeah.
how we feel, how it makes us feel, and
That's a very important point.
yeah,
So, number one, we're not professional critics, in case you
not at
haven't
all.
noticed. Like,
Yeah,
and the other thing is, it won't be for every single one of them, but for the most part, we'll be covering quite a number of comic book movies.
yeah. So obviously your big mainstream ones. You guys know, MCU, DCEU,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
then obviously big hype movies now and then.
But
And
we're not at all experts on the comic books. I
yeah,
mean, for the most part, besides the movies, my source material will just be some of the cartoons I watched
yeah,
growing up.
cartoons, Insta maybe.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So,
And
we won't be looking too much for the accuracy and whatever. It's just a matter of how well they executed the
yeah,
product. Simple as that.
how a normal person would enjoy it.
Exactly. If you're into these sort of movies, that
Yeah.
is. And then, yeah, first of all, we're going to go into Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a Marvel movie that they dropped
Last year.
last year,
Yeah.
mid in like
Well,
third, fourth
it was the
quarter.
first one after Black Widow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Black Widow
Yeah.
was like June thereabouts, and
Yeah.
then this one was like the very next one that they released.
Yes, sir.
So a character I knew nothing about.
I knew the Ten Rings. I knew of
Okay,
the Ten Rings from
okay,
cartoons.
okay.
I knew the Mandarin,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I knew they associated with Iron Man. Not,
Yes, yes, yes,
not
yes,
its own
yes, yes.
standalone. And that's pretty much what I know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, no, no, no. So for me, it was a brand new thing, and I mean, MCU movies. They're about like what 22 plus movies in.
Yeah. Well, I could say what 14, 15 years now, going on 15 years.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Been around for quite some time. There's a
Yeah.
whole lot of interlocking and the
Yeah.
crossovers and so on.
Big time.
So it's very likely and possible that they have mentioned the Ten
Yes.
Rings or something
Yeah.
alluding to them.
Iron Man 3 is when
I
they
meant
first
you mentioned the
mentioned
Mandarin.
the Mandarin, and the group was called the Ten
The
Rings.
Ten
I
Rings.
think.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So I missed that Ten Rings bit. I only remember the Mandarin as being a connection to that. But anyway, I guess what I want to do, right? So a lot of the times people will discuss everything and then they give a rating. I would like to flip that. So if I were to say, give me a rating for Shang-Chi, what would you say?
Oh, I would say 7.58.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I guess I'm a bit biased. I watched it in IMAX. So obviously the CGI was amazing.
Yes, 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 yes,
um,
yes.
As Marvel usually do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd give it 7.58.
7.5 to 8. Okay. I think I would give it an 8 out of 10. Yeah, I would give it a solid 8 out of 10. And here's why. You must keep in mind this is an origin story.
So yeah.
And I don't know if you realize, right? Like, forget the MCU, just comic book movies, period. As far as origin movies go, I would say it's kind of 50-50
Yeah.
as a whole.
Big time.
Because there's that whole thing of, okay, what aspects do you show? What stories are you going to regurgitate? Because some of the origin movies are stuff that we've seen
Yes.
already. And when you're being introduced to someone new, keep in mind the stage at which this guy was introduced.
Yeah.
This is
after the big
exactly.
villain got defeated.
Exactly. This is after core Avengers, and this is after Thanos. And
Yeah.
this is literally, I would say, it's the first movie, right, timeline wise, that came after the events of the
No.
Avengers, as far as the new events.
Spider-Man in London, Far From Home.
Far From Home.
Far From Home was after Tony's death.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. So right after the snap is when people came back, and then they
Yeah.
had Spider-Man. Okay. But this is the first new character
Yes,
that we were
first
introduced.
new
Major character,
First new
anyway.
character that I think they introduced in that whole next phase of MCU.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. So there's a lot riding on him because it's
Yeah,
like
big time.
Yes,
I think he's the first big Asian lead character
yes,
as
there's
well.
that as well. So major points on the representation
Yeah.
front. And keep in mind, right? Like I said, as far as the stage at which you're introducing this dude, he's a brand new character. Spider-Man Far From Home, fair enough, it was
Yeah.
after the event of Thanos, but it's in that
We know
sub-genre or
Spider-Man.
category.
Yeah.
We know Spider-Man, he has a relation to the whole Thanos
Yeah.
story. This was almost a new slate sort of
Yeah.
thing.
And I mean, they barely mentioned the
Any of
snap.
the previous
Yeah.
years, because they wanted to make it a proper standalone.
Yes.
And that speaks to my point, which is that you kind of separating this guy from everything that came before,
Yeah.
and so you can't ride on the success of what came
Yeah.
before him, and that adds a lot of pressure. But I feel like they definitely lived up to
Big
it.
time. Big time. Big
We were
time.
given a fresh character, but one that we were excited about,
Yes.
given how the movie went down, you know.
Yeah.
But let's get into, I think, more specific talking points. Just tell me what your view is on like the overall story that they
Overall
told.
story. So
Yeah.
I like it. So I know Marvel have fallen into this trap sometimes of not having a well-defined villain, and I think it wasn't as defined as say Thanos, but
Hmm.
we had a well-defined villain with being the father,
Yes.
the Ten Rings.
Yes.
But he wasn't like a complete villain as well. So he's relatable,
Yeah. Yeah.
but he's a well-defined villain.
Hmm.
And obviously we've got the big bad at the back, but that didn't take a big forefront, or it didn't. How can I say this? It wasn't like a big reveal. We always knew that was
The
that
villain.
that was the main villain, but
Yeah,
the
yeah,
father
yeah.
was the conduit. So I enjoyed that well-defined villain,
Mhm.
and then other parts I enjoyed. I was thinking about it when I rewatched it.
Yeah.
I would liken it akin to Black Panther in that Black Panther had a predominantly all black cast,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then Shang-Chi predominantly Asian cast.
Yeah.
But obviously the receptions were different based
Mhm.
on how different cultures perceive the
Yes.
representation of their culture in media,
Yeah. Yeah.
specifically Western. But I enjoyed the fact it was all Asian, and it just enlightens you a little bit into the mythology behind that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I'm a big mythology fan, so
Sure.
you like hearing about it. And what I don't know if you've noticed it, but the action sequences,
Oof. We're gonna get there.
the
We're gonna,
action
yeah, yeah, yeah.
sequences
We're gonna
were
get to the actual.
really,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
really good. I enjoyed those a
Mhm.
lot. I would say for me, one or two of the main highlights.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, without a doubt, man. I feel the same way that you did. As far as the story is concerned, like you said, the dad was the villain, and for me, what takes that story to, a further degree and an additional element of enjoyment, is that the underlying story.
yeah,
You must remember when you're dealing with a story that has a villain, all of those are going to be defined by the villain. What I mean is that story is going to be as great as its villain.
yes,
And when you have a villain, the other thing is that the motivation
yes.
of the villain.
You must be if you have a good villain, it must be relatable.
It must be relatable.
It must, for me, what I've seen is it must put you on the fence to be like, wait, he could be right.
Exactly.
Or they could be right.
Exactly. And, I remember very, very vaguely the early days of my beginning to feel that way when watching a movie. As a kid, it's like, he's the bad guy. Kill him,
Yeah.
kill him, kill him. And then I remember I started to get to a stage in my life where I'm like, hey, man, I know he's the
Yeah,
bad guy and
but
I
it's
shouldn't be
making
rooting for him, but
sense.
I can't understand where he's coming from. And that was the thing with this, man. It's a love story at its center,
Yeah.
and you can't go wrong with a love story.
I'm sure 95%
Yeah,
of people can relate to a love story.
exactly. Particularly that whole estranged relationship.
Yeah.
He was estranged from his dad. He
His
lost
mom
his
died
mom when he
young.
was fairly young. While we're there, right? This might be a horrible joke, but I do have to say, are we now meant to? Because obviously Shang-Chi is now an orphan.
Yeah.
Is he like the worst son in the universe, given that both his parents died while he was just there watching? Like, look, with the mom,
Okay.
he was a young
Yeah.
kid.
And I guess also with the dad, he couldn't
He
really
was
do anything.
no, he was just, he didn't try. That was my thing. He was just
Ah.
at this point, he knows how to kick some ass. He was just there watching that thing suck
But
his dad's soul.
he didn't have the rings yet. His father gave it to him as his last
Dude,
act.
punch that thing
Surely-
in the stomach or something. That was my little beef. But yeah,
I
that
mean,
that
surely
aside,
the same could be said for his sister in the second part because she was riding the dragon at the time, if I'm not mistaken.
she I'll shoot her some bail because she
yeah,
was
but
off
then,
screen.
yeah.
She gets the off screen bail. But yeah,
Okay,
that aside,
worst off. No, if we're talking about worst offense, we can get to the next one. I have some opinions.
okay,
I have
okay,
some
okay,
opinions on
okay.
that one.
But yeah, man. So the story about estranged parents. He lost his mom, someone he was very close to, and they had that whole fighting for the approval of your dad
Yeah.
element to it. As a kid, he's like, hey man, my dad wanted to make me like a clean cut assassin. I did whatever he asked, and that training that he went through, I was like, man, punching that bark and taking them whips and the
Making
punches,
holes in that
dude. But it showed his dedication, right? And then they get to a point where they're separated, and the dad is like, not only trying to get him back, he's trying to reunite the entire family.
Yeah.
So never mind how he went about it. Just that element alone is like, man, how many of us wouldn't do whatever it takes to be reunited with our loved
Yeah.
ones, especially where family is concerned. So from that element, it's like he became more relatable. He became more humanized.
Yes, yes.
He became more humanized, which is the other thing when you consider these superhero movies.
Yeah.
It's very easy, and in the modern era of CGI,
Yes.
it's very easy to make everything so grandiose and so massive and in magnitude of the powers and showing off exactly what this one
And
is
I
capable
mean,
of.
MCU have done it.
They do it
they've
a
done
lot.
it, yeah.
They do it a lot.
I think most recently, I would say Scarlet Witch.
Yes, yes, yes. Literally out of this world powers.
Yeah.
Whereas with these dudes, hey man, they can kick some ass at
And
their
they got
bases.
out of these world powers, but the focus was on the character building.
Yes, it was on the normal everyday story. So I feel like they helped us to really connect with that. And here's the thing, dude. It's like they say, there's nothing new under the sun. And I feel like people don't always understand it whenever we throw around the word cliche. Everyone is so quick to say, oh, this was a cliche, that was a cliche.
Yeah, but it's a cliche for a reason.
Because it
it
works. Exactly. And there's only so many stories you can tell.
Yeah.
I don't particularly care how many stories have been told of a particular nature. Because again, at the end of the day, we're talking about superhero movies. There's only so far you can stretch it.
Every 20 years or 10 years, you're gonna recycle them.
same
Like
thing comes
most,
back again.
Most movies are remakes these days.
Exactly.
You
My only concern is always how well did they execute this?
Yeah.
So, if you want to speak about originality and all of that, there's a very small window in which to exercise that, right? But the execution is where it all lies. And I feel like practically everything was executed fairly well. I don't know if you have any particular comments on the casting.
I enjoyed, and who really impressed me was Aquafina. Because I've seen her in
Yes.
other movies, and she's always like a joke
Yeah,
and
yeah,
making
yeah.
fun of and everything.
Yes,
But
yes,
to
yes.
see her in a little bit more serious role with some jokiness,
Yeah.
and with the character growth in the movie, I think she had one of the best character arcs in the movie.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Just to be from like, if you don't shoot, you don't miss, to end up shooting and hitting the
Dude.
target.
A vital shot at that,
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, I think that casting was brilliant.
Yes, 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 yes.
And then obviously, the auntie is Michelle Yeoh, if I'm not mistaken. And
Okay. Oh, that's her.
yeah.
I see her name popping up a lot.
Yeah, so
I don't know if she's maybe been in something recently or what, but
Yeah.
okay, okay.
That's Michelle Yeoh, and she's like the goddess of or the front run of kung fu movies.
Oh,
There's always
okay.
stories I hear like she and Bruce Lee in movies and stuff like
Oh,
that.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, so
So
she's quite legendary.
She's
like.
legendary in the kung fu type
Yeah, yeah,
space.
yeah. Okay.
But obviously, this is me not doing research,
Yeah, yeah,
just
of
hearing
course.
anecdotal evidence.
Sure.
So yeah, so I like that, and then to see Ben Kingsley back. I know you have opinions on that.
Man, yeah.
Just to see
but-
him back, just to tie, as you say, it's a standalone, but he ties it in.
Yes, 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 that's true.
And you should, if you haven't, see the Marvel one shot of All Hail the King.
Okay,
So it's like a 10 to 15 minute video,
okay.
and this was years ago, like I would say, like straight after Iron Man 3 dropped.
Mm.
It's a short video of him in prison, and then he's being interviewed by somebody to say, "Oh, you did this. How did you not know? You're an idiot." And the guy is actually a Ten Rings assassin to say, "Yo, you stole Mandarin's name, and he wants it back." So they've already foreshadowed this.
Oh, that is
all the way
brilliant,
back.
actually.
Yeah,
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So like to see that payoff in the
Yes,
movie was
yes,
for
yes,
me having known it was like chef's
That actually
kisses.
blows my mind then, because while we're on the Mandarin topic, I had some mixed feelings about it. I mean, yes, there's mixed feelings about the character. I'll
Yeah.
get into that just now. But just that concept of, it felt like they were like, man, we screwed up with the Mandarin. Let's do a quick fix.
Yeah, And you might be correct, but then they paid it off.
But that's why I'm like, if it was set up that long ago, then I feel like they deserve some credit. Because I thought it was, oh man, while we're making this Shang-Chi movie, let's just fix this mistake and then, move on with our lives. But if it was set up quite a while back, then okay, I'm happy to accept how
Well,
they
that's
went
that's how
about
I
it.
think. I think it was set up like that.
No, no, no. I mean,
Yeah.
if they mentioned it in the clip from back then already
Yeah.
that, yo, we want our name back,
Yeah.
then there's no other way to go about it than to just acknowledge that, okay, cool. This fix has been in the
Yeah.
making. It wasn't just out of nowhere. Okay, no, that's cool then. And I think for me, on the casting element, it was beautiful, man. It was
Yes.
beautiful.
Everybody.
They fit their role
Yeah.
fairly well. And what I liked about it is that pretty much everyone on there was a new face to me.
Okay. Yeah.
Especially, I mean, of course, we know
Yeah, the
Wang.
big
One
Wong-
is
Wong.
one is becoming a cameo king.
Yes, I was about to say that. Yeah.
He's becoming a young
become-
cameo king. I'm trying to think who else. We
obviously-
mentioned Ben Kingsley,
Ben Kingsley.
Yes.
And then we knew Aquafina.
Aquafina. So that's interesting for me. I've seen the name and face a couple of times.
Have you watched Ocean's 8?
I have. So technically, I've seen her.
Yes.
Oh, okay. But I mean, I watched it like the same year it came out, which is
Yeah.
like 2018, I believe.
Quite well, yeah.
Yeah. So I'd forgotten about her. So I thought, I've never seen this person before, at least as far as,
Oh,
a
and
movie is
Crazy
concerned.
Rich Asians.
Crazy Rich Asians, I only watched afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah,
But she's
because
there-
I
she's
heard
there as
about
well,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, I heard people are like, yeah, I loved it from Crazy Rich Asians as well. So the point being, I like that it was fresh faces across
Yes.
the board, but that they really, really brought it. Because there's this thing in Hollywood called stunt casting. They just bring in big names because tried and tested on the one
Yeah,
end,
it
but
works.
also the fans love them, so they are sure to draw people
Good
in.
draw, yeah.
So it kind of lessens the willingness to take a risk on new people. But I like that they weren't afraid to go for that this time around. And like I said, it really paid off. And it was interesting to find out afterwards that a lot of these people have like quite the lineage. You've mentioned, Michelle Yeoh
Yeah.
has history tracing back to Bruce Lee. I forgot his name, but the dad, he's also quite a legend in Asian
he
movies.
has a familiar face.
Yeah, the dad is like a huge legend. In fact, this might be one of his first,
Hollywood.
even just general English speaking roles.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like in the Western world, he's only known as far as being an import product, as far as the
Okay,
movies that
yeah,
he's
yeah,
done.
yeah.
But not on some come to Hollywood and make movies
Okay.
with us. So he's been established. And Simu Liu, Shang-Chi in the movie, he has also been around. I wasn't aware of him, but there's
Yeah,
this
it's the first time I've
series.
seen that.
Man, the name is escaping me now. But there's a sitcom that he did for quite some time.
Oh, is that Straight Off the Boat?
No, he
No.
wasn't in Fresh Off the Boat.
Fresh Off the Boat, yeah, sorry.
It's gonna come to me. It's gonna come to me. But
Yeah, we'll get to it.
yeah, he was there. I don't remember if that was his family. I think his family owned like a little convenience store or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's on Netflix. But yeah, so he was in that show, but I only knew after Shang-Chi
Yeah.
came out. So he was like a fresh
Yeah.
face as far as I was concerned. And for him to be trusted with such a massive, role,
Oh, yeah.
the lead role in
Just
the movie,
cultural significance.
and how he
MCU
brought it.
significance.
Speaking of cultural significance, we touched on Black Panther earlier.
Yeah.
And maybe, it's because, I'm South African and I'm obviously going to see a lot of South African
Yeah. actors
commentary
and-
on
yeah,
it.
Oh, okay.
But when Black Panther came out, I liked that they had such a strong cultural presence in the
Yes.
movie. People, I think, were just more offended as far as the accuracies are concerned. So things like the pronunciation is off and so on. And then, funny enough, that was maybe the first thing that gave me, I guess, the full understanding as far as why movies like Avatar or shows like Game of Thrones end up inventing their own language.
Yeah.
It's so that
Stay away from all
stay
that.
away from the purists, if you will, or the people from particular cultures, bashing them, because at the end, I guess that effort does have to be praised. And even if you look at it purely from an entertainment perspective, just giving characters that rich of a culture,
Yeah.
it's not something we see often. Never mind Marvel itself, in
Yeah,
general,
yeah.
especially when you are being that serious about it, because it's usually done as some sort of a joke,
And like they gave importance to it as well. Like you can have it
Yes.
there and glance over it, but they gave importance.
it fit into the
Yeah.
story. Yeah, So I think on Black Panther's part, that's what I enjoyed the most. And even on this front, I don't know much about the Asian culture,
Yeah.
but I do know that I picked up some references which seem to be mentioned a lot whenever you find other movies or series mentioning Asian culture,
Yeah.
traditions, and history. Like the dragon that
Yes.
they had in there.
Yeah.
We know about like the fighting being like such a sacred
Yeah,
thing.
and I know some of the CGI monsters, you could say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
They, I've seen them before in like,
yeah.
you know,
Well, it's like the
drawings. Yeah,
mythology or the history of the Asian cultures. So, just as an outsider, knowing that okay, these are relevant to some extent, I really enjoy that, and also just how much they embrace it.
yeah.
The language,
Spoke a lot of Mandarin there.
the
They
language,
spoke
my
a lot.
man.
Yeah.
I don't think never mind the MCU once again, but for a lot of these mainstream movies, it doesn't happen that often that you get.
And not in English.
Yes, if it does, it's just a couple of lines, and once
Yeah.
again, more often for humorous effects than anything else. But I like that it seemed to pay serious homage, and they even had an Asian director, so it was someone
Okay.
at the helm who knew and understand the history. At least we can assume that
Yeah.
that was the case. So I liked to see that sort of shine in there, and what I liked even more is that in this modern age of representation being important, it didn't feel like pandering.
Yeah, it didn't feel forced.
No,
Not
it
at all.
felt authentic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to take it a step further, I've mentioned I'm obviously not from the Asian community, but a lot of people from the community have said that, man, I felt like I'm represented and on this massive
Yeah.
scale, not on some VHS, on, some
Yeah.
straight to DVD or tape sort of movie, some
Or like it's
B-lister.
just some caricature of what we
Nah,
actually are.
man, it felt authentic, it was real, and to have it mainstream and to have it global, that was, something pretty insane. So I think shout out to Marvel for doing that sort of
Yeah.
thing, because anytime they have like some alien in there, we get the rich
Yeah.
story about the alien, where he came from,
Yeah.
and
It's
their
nice
language
to
might
see our
even
own
be
people
exactly. It's nice to see
humans,
humans, getting
get
the same
this-
sort of
get the
respect.
rub,
So
yeah.
I think, yeah, definitely a shout out to them on that front. Do you have any standout moments that you found in the movie?
stand out. Sure.
Yeah,
For me, in general, I would say the CGI.
yeah,
That big fight at the end.
Yeah,
That
yeah, yeah, yeah.
CGI, and as I said it before, like IMAX, it popped.
sure.
It popped big time, and
Yeah.
it just it's the world building. I think the world building was,
Yes,
was
yes, yes, yes,
beautiful,
yes, 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 yes.
especially when they moved over to the ancient civilization.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
That
enjoyed
village of
that.
his. Okay,
Yeah, and then I think I mentioned as well just Aquafina's character growth.
okay.
That was like a standout. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like
yeah.
in terms of moments,
Yeah.
not really. Maybe the cameos from Wong and Abomination.
Abomination.
Yeah.
Yes, 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 yes. Okay.
Yeah, the cameos are always a nice treat.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. I think for me, one of the you mentioned earlier that the fights were just
Yeah.
incredible, and there's something about the first of whatever we mentioned now about he is an origin
Yes.
story, meaning it's the first of his franchise. There's something about whether it's the first scene in the movie or what I'm trying to get to now, the first fight scene,
Is that the
which was on the bus.
Yeah.
Oof.
Okay.
Oof, how
Yeah.
insane was that fight, man? And what I liked
Like,
about it, right?
The,
So,
the pure athleticism.
dude, and the fact that it was out of nowhere, especially on
Yeah.
his part, because it's like that's the other thing about how they made this a special origin movie. Here's the origin blueprint, if you will.
Yeah.
Normal guy
Something
gets a
happened.
little something, and then he's super.
Yeah.
This dude, the guys were on the bus like, yo, we need the pendant. He's like, man, what are you talking about? They're like, yo, we need the pendant or we're going to kick your ass. Next thing, this guy, he's whooping them left to right like it's nothing.
Yeah.
He was just a
Valet
valet.
park, yeah.
He was a valet like a couple of minutes before, So I was like, oh, shit, he already got it like that, And what I noticed, because it's one of those movies you just had to watch the second time, man.
Yeah.
I went and I watched it again. And what I noticed is that in that fight, as much as he's kicking, there was a progression in how he was fighting.
Yeah.
So at first, he's, don't get it twisted, he was laying them out, definitely like, kicking all over the place. But there was a point where, I can't remember the exact scene now. Was it maybe after he was thrown out of the car or the bus momentarily, then he got back in? But there was a part where he did this stance with his hands.
Okay.
After he did that, he was kicking the ass on a whole new level, as if he wasn't doing enough already. So just the fact that that fight scene alone, yes, it's the first fight scene.
Yeah.
It's the first time that we're seeing that, oh, he can actually fight like that. But
And it set the tone of the movie. Like,
exactly, it got you excited for
Yeah.
what's to come afterwards. But the fact that they had him fight in a progressive manner in that scene alone, I was like, okay, this is pretty dope. And another thing that action movies tend to fall into, the first action scene is very big.
Yeah.
But more often than not, these days they tend to drop the ball as far as the rest of the action scenes. And I don't think they did that this time
No,
around. You know,
I think they were all good.
yeah,
So I remember that one. Obviously, when he fought his sister. Yeah.
yeah.
What is the other ones?
It was when he fought his sister.
Sister, including
Uh,
them fighting on the scaffolding.
Dude, how insane was
Yeah.
that? And I don't know how purposeful
I don't know.
this
I don't know.
was.
I don't know how much of that was CGI, but I'd love to know. I'd love to know.
And earlier on, actually, when you were mentioning CGI, I wanted to say that in this world where CGI is such a given, we need to give praise to the fact that it still can be done at such an amazing level.
Yeah.
You know, because remember, in its original form, CGI was meant to enhance the scene, not necessarily take over.
Yeah.
So whenever you're watching something in CGI, dude, towards the end at the village there, when they had those animals, I was looking at them like, those are fake, right? Like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
you're really certain that, nah, this
Morris.
definitely isn't real. And, you know, Morris, you know,
Morris.
yeah.
Morris is champ.
I was like, this is insane. So just the level of detail they put into the
Yeah.
CGI. And speaking of that scene, I remember I read somewhere that on the bus, when the guys approached him at first, he said something along the lines of, I don't want any trouble before fighting. Apparently that was paying homage to Jackie Chan.
Oh.
Because I didn't even know this as much as I've watched so many of his movies. Apparently it's a line that he says a lot in his movies.
Oh, okay.
I know that he expresses that
I
sentiment.
feel like he said it in Rush Hour somewhere.
The thing is, right, I may not recall the line, but I know it's a sentiment he expresses a lot, which is, I'm not trying to fight.
Yeah.
And then they push him and then he fights back. So he did that as a homage to Jackie Chan. And speaking of the scaffolding scene, I don't know if this was on purpose, but it brought to mind a lot of Jackie Chan movies because
Yeah,
he's had
jumping
those
around, climbing.
bamboo scaffolding fighting scenes as well. So I think just that, and we know, of course, the bamboo is also a very
Yeah.
important element, you know, in
Yeah.
Asian culture and everyday practices and so on. So I was like, just all of that tying into one another was pretty dope. But that scene was pretty insane. When Aquafina was falling to her death,
Ooh.
I was at the edge of my seat.
Yeah, I bet.
There's the other thing we need to acknowledge about these movies, right? Like I said, there's only so many things that you can do that are new and different.
Yeah.
But certain elements you almost can't avoid. The near death is one of them. But whenever you have a near death and you have me
And
shook,
the thing is, that was in the beginning of the movie, and you know deaths
Exactly.
happen at the beginning,
Exactly.
and then they don't come back.
and she wasn't a character that made you feel like no way she could have died.
Yeah.
Anything could have happened with her. You know, she
Best friends, something always happens to a best friend.
exactly.
You know, like if you go in Captain America with Bucky.
He just
Bucky
dies right in
Yeah.
the first movie. You know, it may be at different points in the movie, but it'll happen.
Yeah.
So just the way, and if you remember, she was falling, and he couldn't get to her because usually when that happens, the heroes are the one to
Yeah.
save her. And when he couldn't get to, I was like, this is it. And bear
Yeah,
in
boom.
mind, given the height and you know the fact that they're above
Yeah.
working road and everything, I was like, there's no way she could fall and survive. I
Yeah.
thought she was done.
That was a good swerve.
And then you know, she was actually rescued at the end. I was like, okay, to still have my heart jumping at this
Yeah.
point with this sort of scene, I was like, I give you guys a whole lot of credit. And now tell me, as far as the bridging of everything, man, we spoke about how the beginning was pretty great,
Yeah.
right? And I feel like they tied it in fairly well in the middle.
Yeah.
The ending of it.
Okay.
You spoke about Aquafina's progression in particular. Do you think that the entire story as a whole progressed fairly well?
Yeah.
Maybe even with like, you know, reference to both Shang-Chi and his
Yeah,
dad?
I think Shang-Chi and his dad, and then just how they, you know, they were at odds.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
they
yeah.
still wanted that connection, but then they were
Yes.
at odds again, and then finally they had that moment. And I like Shang-Chi's progression as well. It was like he doesn't know who he is, or he knows who he is. Then his life comes back, and then he's in turmoil.
Yes,
And
yes,
then
yes.
you know he's still kicking ass, but he's not winning the big one.
Yes,
And
yes,
then at
yes,
the
yes.
end, when he has that fight with Michelle Yeoh, his aunt,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then he figures himself out, and then again with his dad,
Yeah.
he figures it out, and then like, okay, I liked his character progression. He realizes who he is, and then yeah, I enjoyed that progression a
Yeah,
lot
yeah,
as
yeah.
well. Like just the figuring out of who you are, and
And I don't think that's something we
Eventually-
can take for granted, hey,
Yeah.
as far as his personal development and growth. Given how well, especially in the fighting sense, how well he seemed to have everything together. Like,
Yeah.
yes, we know that, he's kind of wasting his life away, being a valet,
And I
messing
guess
around.
that's life in general. Like you have one facet of your life, 100%.
Yeah, yeah.
That's everything else.
Everything
That's
else kind
not.
of crumbling.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So the fact that, as well as he could fight, there was still a lot of growth and development that could
Yeah.
happen, not only in the fighting
Emotionally,
space,
yeah.
but emotionally as well. Because remember, from the outside looking in, it's like, yeah, he's just wasting his life away.
Yeah.
What's going on? But he's
We-
got an
we've all-
eternal
we-
struggle
we've
that he's
all-
running away from.
And we've chatted about this,
Yeah, yeah.
outside of this and whatever. Like, we always trying to like we get through those patches where we're just like flat.
Yeah, man. Where it's like, man, I don't want to deal with anything serious.
Yeah.
There's so much going on. You try to just dry it out with whatever you can, and the aunt pulling through to him was such a significant thing because remember, he's without his mom, he's without his dad,
No parental figure really.
he's without his sister. So family as a whole, Aquafina is basically his entire family. That's why they were tied for as many
And
years
that's
as
why
they
the
were.
granny was like, "When are you getting
When are
married?"
you getting married? Yeah, because clearly you two get along
Yeah.
so well, and it's been such a long time. But the fact that they were able to just bring that, I guess, full circle, if I can say that, particularly with the fighting, because I feel like, especially with regards to his dad, it was necessary in order for him to be able to go to that extent.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's one thing to have that emotional turmoil, but when it's time to actually act on it,
Yeah.
there's still something holding you back.
And I guess also him, because he was fighting more like his dad, and then eventually blending his mother's way of fighting and his dad's way of fighting
Yes,
into
yes.
his own style.
And just evolving as a
Yeah.
fighter once again. Like I said, he's been showing that in quite a lot of the fight scenes even from before. I think that was pretty dope. And then the dad's particular story arc, yeah,
Well, I feel like, I don't know about you, but I feel like it was always going to end like that. Star-crossed lovers
yeah.
situation.
I guess, but it's also a matter of how they would have executed it. I'm glad. I mean, as sinister as this is gonna sound, I'm very glad that the dad died.
Yeah, I mean, there was no go forward if he didn't die.
Yeah.
Like, the passing of the rings
Yes, that's true.
is a big factor there, and
Yeah.
because he could only live without the rings when he was with his beloved.
Yes,
And
yes,
then
yes, yes.
Outside of that,
This is not possible
Yeah.
for him. Yeah. So I
he
think
he filled one void with another.
yeah. Him dying was necessary on two particular fronts, right? So, I mean, you and I have spoken quite a bit about how. I mean, in case you don't know, Iron Man came out as the pure Marvel movie,
Yeah,
and then they did the Incredible Hulk, and then with the success of Iron Man, they swooped right in. Disney, that is, bought them out,
they
and
buy
then
them out that early.
yeah, they bought them out that early, which is why if you think about it, Iron Man 2 got so much criticism, and it makes sense as far as the timeline because I believe that was the first Disney Marvel movie to be released, so that's when they came in with their influence.
Yeah.
The influence being, I mean, dude, Iron Man 1 wasn't even that dark, but by Disney standards, it was a dark movie.
Yeah.
So everything else has to have like a nice happy tone, and even if there are like death or dark scenes, you try and lighten the load, whether it's with a joke or whatever other, mood uplifting
When you
elements.
say Iron Man 2, I always think bird.
Exactly, exactly, and that was such a big takeaway, and not in a good way,
Yeah.
from that movie. So the fact that they had the dad die instead of, oh no, he's just gonna be reformed, and then we keep him on.
Yeah.
I like that they went that route.
But
Like I said,
Marvel actually kill off a lot of parents.
they do, but if you think about the significance of
Yeah.
the character, never mind it being a parent, sometimes they try to just keep people around for whatever reason. So in this particular case, I like that the dad died off because we avoiding that cliche of, oh, we're gonna reform
Keep
you
them,
and rescue
yeah,
you.
Become a whole family again.
And the other thing is, a lot of the people that stick around, especially those that were villains in the beginning, they tend to be watered down throughout
Yeah,
the rest of their run.
Loki.
I was gonna say Loki's a prime example.
Loki's,
Loki was a proper badass in Avengers.
even Wanda was a villain initially.
Yeah. And then now she's,
But now she's like the baddest ass on the
exactly.
in the world.
I was gonna say, in some cases, it kind of makes sense. Even Vision, you could kind of sort of,
Yeah.
put in that same box. But when they become awesome enough, then we can forgive. But
Yeah.
we still want that to be done every single time. So I think for him to lose his dad, even in spite of them having that cathartic moment, because I mean, the dad was just so convinced that, yo, your mom is in there, I'm gonna rescue her. If I need to go through you, I'm gonna go through
Yeah.
you. So to have that and then him just dying afterwards, I think it was important not only to avoid certain cliches, but also for Shang-Chi's own personal development, I think it's just one of those things that's just going to make him
yeah,
stronger going
his
forward.
dad stunted his growth.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And then now without
He's
him,
got, yeah,
and he did get some sort of resolution.
yes,
And remember, the dad actually passed the rings on. It wasn't a matter of, oh, my dad's gone, now I'm going
they
to
had
take
that
them. Like,
deep eye contact.
and then
They
he
let
just,
it go, yeah.
he just gave them to him. I think, yeah, that was one of those special moments that they could have had right before the dad's passing. Do you maybe have any elements where you feel like something you weren't too happy about, or maybe something they overlooked, or a shortfall, essentially?
Let's see, short for. Not offhand, eh?
Yeah.
As a movie as a whole, I
Yeah,
enjoyed
yeah,
it. I went in not expecting anything.
Yes, yes,
It's
yes,
a
yes, yes.
completely new character, and they, yeah,
Okay.
blew my mind. Um,
For me, I don't think it's Shang-Chi related as such. It's more of a Marvel thing. I wasn't too much of a fan of that whole Mandarin reveal in Iron Man 3, So,
Okay.
because remember, in the clips in the movie, he looked like such a badass. And then to be on some, oh, I'm Trevor, I'm an actor, and I'm like, guys. So when he was gone, I was happy about it. And then they just
Then they
brought him
brought him
back,
back.
and I'm like, ah. So, I won't lie.
but I guess now you know it's the tie-in.
It's the tie-in
Yeah.
to correcting that
And
story,
apparently he speaks to mythical creatures.
That's it's like, oh, so now
Okay.
he's back and he's got this
No
superpower out of
explanation
nowhere,
at all.
and so for me, I wouldn't say a complete shortfall or complete mistake, but I
But,
did struggle
yeah.
with him a little bit. But I appreciate that they at least use him to move the story forward. I'll definitely give him a whole lot of credit for that.
Yeah, he wasn't a fall guy this time.
No, 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 no. And I also like that the sister had quite a strong presence.
Yeah.
You
and
could
going
argue it could have
forward-
been stronger, but I feel like it wasn't
but I
that,
th- I think,
this
I
is
think
another
it's more
family
of a
member.
setup
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for,
yeah.
the
What's
end
coming
the end
next?
credit scene, yeah. To
Okay.
see it. Do you remember it?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, she's the Ten Rings
history
leader
of
now.
the rings and all. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
She's the leader of the gang now.
So I think
Yeah, I
with
think it's more of the setup.
with that in mind, I'm glad that she got that sort of a
Yeah.
meaty role, because usually it's just like the star and then everyone else in their
Star.
life. Nah. But
The
this time
fem- the-
around,
the female leads had strong, defined
yes.
roles in the movie.
And as a whole, the family members, particularly in Shang-Chi's parts, they had a key role to play. So I definitely enjoyed that element. And then, as far as we've, I guess, touched on it a little bit now, going forward with his story, here's my one little concern, right? So, in general, I have a bit of a concern about the new Avengers going forward,
Okay.
because it seems like, I mean, granted, we haven't gotten too many of those guys, but it's almost like you can't really see how they're going to form that team,
Yeah.
given the type of characters
I
we
guess-
had before.
I guess that's where Wong and Banner come in now.
Okay.
Because Wong is cameoing everywhere. Now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then Bruce is like from the original, but still on Earth, whereas Thor's gone somewhere else now.
Yeah.
So you've got Bruce as your father figure,
Yes, yes, yes.
and then you've got Wong as the continuity thread.
Okay,
I don't know. That's how I see it.
okay, okay.
But I don't see. Yeah, as there hasn't been any reveal as to who the big bad is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I guess the Skrulls are one that's been floated around,
Okay.
and Kang the Conqueror.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
has been
But he's gonna be
floated.
like the big villain. I
Yeah.
think it's gonna take a while. We're gonna see him a
Oh,
lot.
so you're saying they're gonna do somewhere like the original Avengers arc, where they had Loki was the first level 1 villain, and then Thanos was the boss level.
Assuming that they'll follow the same blueprint, I think so. But given how early Kang was introduced, maybe he's gonna step in earlier than we
Yeah.
think. So my thing is just the general vision. But I guess the less we know and the less we can predict, the better. But given that the 10 Rings has a new leader, I think that
And we
brings
still
in
have
an
to find
exciting
out, like moving forward for Ten Rings specifically, the source of the power.
the source
and
of the
who
power.
it's the beacon for.
Which is older than what they say 10,000 years or something, so it's like an old ancient power, which could be a good or bad thing. Sometimes when you have, whether it's a good or bad character, if they're kind of overpowered,
Yeah.
if their powers are too grand, it kind of takes away what we were saying about the relatability
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. But I mean, they could still use, Shang-Chi still has a sister, so they could use that family as like
Yeah.
the relatability element. So we'll see. But I'm definitely keen to see what's going to happen there. I just really hope they don't mess it up. Because if you think about the MCU also,
Sequels are.
trilogies in particular, they
Yeah.
tend to be pretty shaky. I mean, off the top of my head, there's only two solid trilogies we've gotten: Captain America, Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, yeah.
Yeah, the others, it's been a bit of a touch and go
So we
situation.
had Tony Stark, we had
We had-
Iron Man, and we had Thor.
Yeah,
We haven't had a Hulk yet,
no.
but
And I hope we don't.
I don't think
we,
they are
we
going
don't
to.
need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we
That's
we
pretty
see
much
enough of
it. Yeah. So they're gonna need to play their cards right in order to ensure that you keep hitting the nail on the head as you go along. But yeah, I think we've managed to justify our, you said 7.5 to 8. I said yeah, solid 8 rating, and I hope that they're not gonna try and chase the success of this one. Just stick to your
Stick
roots,
to your
man.
original storyline. Whatever you had
Exactly.
planned,
Keeping
stick
it
to that.
nice, plain, simple, to the
Yeah.
point, and then on its own, it's gonna blossom into something incredible.
Definitely.
But yeah, I'm definitely super keen to see where they're gonna take the story next. As far as the interconnections with the rest of the
Yeah.
universe and also his standalone
It
projects.
will even pop up in others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What capacity is he gonna be helping or just observing and all. But okay, I think yeah, that then pretty much sums up our review for Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi, yeah.
I don't know if there's maybe like final comments or anything you
No,
wanted
I
to add
think
onto it.
in terms of the movies, it's
Yeah.
one of the more rewatchable ones.
Without a
Big
doubt.
time.
Yeah. And I think also it's one of the ones that straddled the line the best of action, emotion, and the Disney comedy. Yeah.
Yeah, the Disney comedy didn't feel out of place.
Nah, man. I've you
Yeah.
know how many times I've had an issue with that sort of thing, and it seems like
We
they
can
kind
do
of
a retro review someday.
listen, man. I'm happy to keep going in on them over it, but I will say it seems like they've started to find their footing where that is
Yeah.
concerned, and given how different and diverse everything just feels now as far as these new movies, it feels like they're stepping back. This is Marvel now, and Kevin Feige in particular. They kind of sort of stepping back and letting people be instead of trying to micromanage
Okay.
every single thing because everything has its own feel and tone. Whereas earlier, it's almost as though they wanted to fit everything onto a monolith of sorts.
Okay.
So I'm pretty keen for that, and I hope they keep it going because for the
Yeah.
most part, it's been working in their favor.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, then I guess that pretty much sums it up then for our very first review. Shout out.
Shang-Chi, yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Too many more. Too many more.
I'd say I'm pretty happy with how that one went. And then yeah, we'll catch you guys at the next one then.